Everybody, raise your glass for my big sister. Ijeoma is 35 years old today. 35 and still single. She came to my wedding without a date, without a ring, without even a small boyfriend to hold her handbag. Please, let's clap for her. Let's encourage her. Maybe next year, eh? That's serious, oh. Maybe she's too picky. Happy birthday, Auntie Single. Do and bring a man home.
Chidinma, that's enough. She is your elder sister.
What now? Old single people cannot take jokes? I'm only joking. Haba. Chidinma, I'm glad you're happy today. But you didn't have to make me the joke of your wedding. I'm your sister, not your entertainment. Oh, come on, Ijeoma. Why are you acting like this? It was just a joke. Maybe if you smiled more instead of looking so serious all the time, a man would actually notice you. Everybody, don't mind her. She's always this sensitive.
Ijeoma sat there, in her green dress, the one she had bought with her own money, the one she had ironed herself that morning in a rented room 3 streets from the hall where her little sister was marrying a man whose family owned half of Transamadi. She sat there and she smiled, because that is what a person learns to do in this life. You learn to smile when your chest is on fire. But what happened 4 months after that wedding shocked the same people who laughed at her that day. It shocked Chidinma most of all. Some insults are just seeds. You plant them in the wrong soil and they grow into something that swallows the person who threw them. Before we continue, please hit the subscribe button and turn on the bell because this story has a turn in it that you will not see coming. Also, kindly drop a comment right now and tell me where you're watching from tonight. Now, let's go back to the beginning, back before the wedding, back to how a 35-year-old woman ends up sitting alone at her own sister's celebration while the whole hall laughs at her. Ijeoma was the first child. In that house, that should have meant something. In that house, it meant she was the practice child, the one her parents figured things out on, while her younger sister Chidinma became the one they perfected everything on. Chidinma was 3 years younger and prettier in the way that photographs well. Round face, small waist, a laugh that made rooms turn toward her. Ijeoma was the serious one, the one with her head always in a book, the one who preferred numbers to parties, the one their mother introduced as, "My daughter that is very intelligent," in a tone that somehow always sounded like an apology for something else. By the time Chidinma was 24, she already had a fiancé. By the time Ijeoma was 28, she had a business degree, a junior accounting job at a shipping firm in Port Harcourt, and a mother who had started asking in front of visitors whether she was carrying a grudge against marriage. She was not carrying a grudge against marriage. She was carrying rent, school fees for her younger cousin Nnamdi, and a small dream she had not told anyone, not even Chidinma. She wanted to own something. Not a husband's house, not a husband's car, something with her own name on the papers, something no one could take from her on a bad day. Nobody in the family understood that dream. To them, a woman her age with no ring was not building anything. She was simply late. "Ijeoma, see your mate. She has 2 children already," her auntie said to her at a family function when she was 30, in front of at least 15 people, the way you would announce a football score. "Some of us are just slow, auntie. God's time is the best," Ijeoma said, and everybody laughed, including her, because what else do you do? But Chidinma did not laugh with kindness. Chidinma laughed the way people laugh when they have found a permanent source of comedy. Over the years, Ijeoma is slow became a kind of family joke, repeated so often it stopped sounding cruel to the people who said it and started sounding simply true. Hold on to that phrase, Ijeoma is slow. We will come back to it. At 32, Ijeoma left the shipping firm. She had saved carefully for 6 years, cutting corners nobody saw, wearing the same 3 work blouses in rotation, walking instead of taking a keke when the distance allowed it. She used what she had saved, plus a small loan she told no one about, to open a logistics consultancy, helping small importers in Port Harcourt carry their goods faster and cheaper through the ports. It nearly killed her in the first year. She slept some nights in the small office because she could not afford both office rent and a separate apartment. She ate garri more times than she would ever admit out loud. Her mother, when she heard Ijeoma had left a stable job to hustle with imported goods, cried actual tears on the phone. Ijeoma, is it because you don't have a husband to take care of you that you are now doing men's work? Please come back to your senses. She did not go back to her senses, if you can call it that. She stayed with the business, and slowly, so slowly that even she did not notice at first, it began to breathe. By the time Chidima met her fiancé Richard, a man from a wealthy family in the oil and gas business, Ijeoma's consultancy had 11 staff and 3 clients doing regular container business through the ports. She had bought a small plot of land in Woji, quietly, in her own name, telling only her lawyer and her accountant. She had not built on it yet. She was saving for that too. She told no one in her family the real numbers, partly out of habit, partly, she would admit, out of something else. A small, sharp part of her that had grown tired of everything she did being measured against a ring she did not have. So, while her family believed she was still managing a small business, hustling at 34 with nothing solid to show for it, she was quietly becoming a woman worth more, on paper, than most of the men her aunties kept parading in front of her. Nobody knew. Nobody asked properly. In that family, once you are labeled slow, people stop asking real questions about your life. They simply repeat the label at every gathering, like a chorus that has forgotten it's even singing about a real person. When Richard proposed, the whole family lit up like Christmas came early. Their mother wept with joy in a way she had never wept for anything Ijeoma had built. Their father, a quiet man, actually danced a little in the sitting room, his belly shaking with a happiness Ijeoma rarely saw directed at anything she did. Ijeoma was happy for Chidima. She loved her sister, she still did, but love does not stop something from hurting, and it hurt her that her own joy, the business, the land, the 11 staff members whose salaries she paid every month without fail meant nothing at the family table unless it came wrapped in a wedding gown. The planning began, and with it the comments sharpened like knives on a stone. Ijeoma, you will help your sister plan, Abi. At least let this wedding teach you something for when your own time comes. Chidima, when is Ijeoma's own coming? We cannot be attending only your invitations for the rest of our lives. Ijeoma, you better hurry up. Chidima is even overtaking you and she's the last born. She helped anyway. She paid for the ashwebi fabric for 20 of Chidima's friends when the money from the groom's family delayed at the last minute, and she told no one it was her. She sourced a discount on the event hall through a contact from her logistics work, saving the family almost 400,000 naira, and she told no one that either. She did not do these things to be praised. She did them because Chidima was her sister, and because somewhere underneath everything, she still hoped that quiet, consistent love would eventually be recognized as louder than a ring. It was not. Chidima's bridal shower happened at a hotel in GRA, hosted by her 3 closest friends, Faith, Blessing, and a girl named Onyike, who Ijeoma had never fully trusted, the way you don't trust a smile that arrives before the greeting does. So, Ijeoma, when will we be doing this same thing for you? Onyike asked, loud enough for the table to hear, her voice syrupy with a concern that had teeth in it. When the time is right, Ijeoma said, the way she always said it. The time, Blessing laughed. Ijeoma, the time does not wait for anybody. Look at your mate. Look at Chidima. You people used to be in the same class in school, and now she's about to be somebody's wife, and you're still saying when the time is right. Chidima, sitting in the center of the room in white, adjusted her crown and said lightly, the way you say something you have said so many times it no longer feels sharp to you. Leave my sister. She is slow, that one. Very slow. The table laughed. Ijeoma laughed too, because she still had not learned, even at 35, how to simply say stop. A few weeks before the wedding, their mother called Ijeoma into her room. Ijeoma thought, foolishly, her mother wanted to thank her for the Aswebi money which had somehow leaked out despite her silence. Ijeoma, I need to ask you something, and please don't be offended," her mother began, sitting on the edge of her bed. "Do you think you should even come to the wedding with your current status? People will be asking questions. It might overshadow your sister's day, you understand? Maybe you can help from behind the scenes and just not be too visible on the day itself." Ijeoma sat very still. Outside, she could hear Namdi playing for ball with the neighbor's children, their laughter drifting up through the window, ordinary and untouched by what was happening in that room. "You want me to hide at my sister's wedding," she said slowly, "because I'm not married? I'm not saying hide, I'm just saying don't make it about you." Ijeoma had never, in 35 years, tried to make anything about herself. That was the part that broke something quiet inside her chest. But she said only, "I'll be there, Mama, don't worry." Her mother looked relieved and slightly disappointed, as though she had expected a bigger fight, one that would have given her something to discuss with her sisters on the phone that evening. The wedding, by every account, was beautiful. Chidima in a gown that had come from Lagos, Richard in agbada the color of ripe cashew, two families uniting under a white tent decorated with fresh orchids flown in from somewhere nobody asked about. Ijeoma sat where she was placed, a table near the back, close enough to see everything, far enough to be seen by no one who mattered. She had come alone, in green, her own money on her back, and her own land quietly sitting in Woji, with nothing built on it yet, but everything already decided. It was during the toast, after the cutting of the cake, that Chidima took the microphone from the MC, laughing, wine already loosening her tongue, and said the words that opened this story. "Everybody raise your glass for my big sister. Ijeoma is 35 years old today. 35 and still single." I will not repeat all of it again. You already heard it. But picture what it felt like sitting there, watching a sister perform your loneliness for entertainment, watching 200 people you had grown up around laugh at the sound of your own life being called a failure. Ijeoma stood up. The room quieted slightly, expecting perhaps tears, perhaps a scene, perhaps the kind of dramatic exit Nigerian weddings are famous for producing. She did none of that. She smiled, a real smile this time, not the practiced one, and she said, loud enough for the front tables to hear, "Congratulations, Chidima. I wish you and Richard everything good. I mean that." Then she sat back down, finished her drink, stayed until the last dance, and drove herself home in the small Toyota she had bought with cash 2 years earlier. If you are enjoying this story so far, this is where I ask you to hit that like button and drop a comment telling me, have you ever been mocked by your own family for being single? I read every single comment on this channel, Tease Tales by Moonlight, so don't be shy. Now, let's continue, because what happens next is the part nobody at that wedding saw coming. Not long after the wedding, a man named Engineer Sokari Amadi walked into Ijeoma's office in Transamadi with a problem. His construction firm was bringing in heavy equipment through the port, and customs had flagged 3 containers, threatening delays that would cost him millions of penalties on a federal contract with a hard deadline. Ijeoma had worked with firms like his before. She made calls she knew how to make, filed the paperwork she knew how to file, and within days, his containers were cleared and moving. He came back to her office personally to thank her, which men in his position rarely did. He was tall, quiet in his speech the way genuinely confident men often are, with the kind of calm that made a room feel less urgent simply by his presence in it. They talked business for 20 minutes. Then, almost as an afterthought, he asked if she would have dinner with him, not for business this time. She did not tell him her age immediately. She did not tell him about the wedding, or the toast, or the word slow that had followed her around her own family for a decade. She simply said yes, because for the first time in a long time, someone was interested in her without first asking what she lacked. At the same time Ijeoma and Sokari were quietly getting to know each other over dinners she made sure to keep private, something else was unfolding in the background, something her family did not yet know about. The federal contract Sokari's firm had secured included the construction of a private logistics hub in Woji. He needed a consultancy to manage the customs and clearance side, long-term, not just for one shipment, but for the whole project. He had already met with 2 larger firms before finding out through a mutual contact that the woman who solved his container problem so quickly ran her own consultancy. He offered her the contract. Not out of romance, he made that very clear, and she respected him more for it, but because she was, in his words, the most competent person he had worked with on that coast. That single contract tripled her company's annual revenue. She hired 14 more staff. And the land she had bought quietly in Woji years earlier, the land nobody in her family knew about, turned out to sit less than half a kilometer from where Sokari's new logistics hub would be built. She had not planned that. She would tell you honestly, she had not planned that. Sometimes, life simply rewards the patient the way it should have all along, quietly and all at once. Some months after the wedding, their mother called Ijeoma, her voice strange, tight, careful in a way that Ijeoma had not heard before. Ijeoma, I heard something today and I need you to tell me if it's true. What did you hear, Mama? They are saying Mrs. Ossi's husband works at the Port Authority and he's saying that you are the one handling the clearance for the big Amadi construction project, the one worth billions, Ijeoma. Is this true? Is this you they are talking about? She paused for a moment, not out of shame, but simply to let the truth arrive properly, without rushing it, the way she had learned to let everything arrive in its own time. Yes, Mama, that's me. The silence on the other end of the phone lasted almost 10 seconds. Then her mother said, in a voice smaller than Ijeoma had ever heard from her, "Why didn't you tell us? Ijeoma, we've been saying things about you, things I'm not proud of now." "I know, Mama," she said gently. "I heard everything. I just didn't think you were ready to hear the other side of my life yet." Word travels fast in a town like Port Harcourt, especially when it involves money and a woman the family had quietly written off. By the time the story of the Amadi Logistics Hub made its way through the church group chats and the family WhatsApp threads, it had grown 3 sizes larger than the truth, the way stories do. Some versions said Ijeoma owned half the project. Some said she and Sokari were already secretly married. None of it was fully accurate, but none of it needed to be because the effect was the same. The family that had spent a decade calling her slow suddenly wanted to know everything about her life all at once with an urgency that would have been funny if it hadn't also been so revealing. Chidinma called her sister herself a few days after their mother did. Her voice was different too, smaller, the confidence that had carried her through that wedding toast noticeably absent. "Ijeoma, I'm sorry," she said, without preamble. "I'd been thinking about what I said at the wedding. I was drunk and I was trying to be funny and I didn't think about how it would actually land. I'm sorry." Ijeoma let the apology sit for a moment before she answered, not to punish her sister, but because some words deserve a little silence around them before you respond. "Chidinma, you called me slow in front of 200 people. Not for the first time either. You've been calling me that since we were teenagers." "I know," replied Chidinma. "Do you know why I never really fought back? Because I told myself, one day my life will speak for itself and I won't need to defend it in a room full of people who already decided what they think of me." "Your life is definitely speaking now," Chidinma said, and there was something in her tone, not quite jealousy, something closer to genuine, humbled surprise. "Everyone is asking about you. My own husband's family is asking about you." "How does that feel?" Ijeoma asked, and she meant it as a real question, not a jab. Chidinma was quiet for a long moment. "Honestly, it feels like I finally understood that I was measuring the wrong thing. I thought a ring meant you'd won. I didn't think about what you were actually building while the rest of us were performing. Chidima let out a shaky laugh. I spent a lot of time thinking I was ahead of you because I got married first. I never stopped to ask if you were even running the same race. Ijeoma smiled softly. We were never competing, Chidima. I was your little sister. I was always cheering for you. I know, Chidima whispered, and I treated you like an opponent instead. Another silence settled between them. Then Chidima spoke again. Can you ever forgive me? Ijeoma hesitated for a few seconds before answering. I won't pretend it didn't hurt. It did, more than you'll ever know. She paused. But carrying that hurt won't change what happened. So, yes, Chidima, I forgive you. On the other end of the line, Chidima broke down crying. Thank you, she sobbed. I don't deserve it, but thank you. You don't have to earn forgiveness, Ijeoma replied gently. Just learn from it. That's enough for me. I promise I will. And the next time you introduce me in public, Chidima laughed through her tears, you'll introduce me as my rich big sister. Now that's more like it, Ijeoma teased. For the first time in years, they weren't speaking as rivals or strangers who happened to share the same parents. They were simply sisters again. They stayed on that phone call for hours, talking about childhood memories, laughing over old family stories, and teasing each other the way sisters should. By the time they finally hung up, neither of them could remember who had called whom. Some months later, Sokari asked Ijeoma to marry him. Not with a public spectacle, not with drones and choreographed dancers and a hired videographer chasing their every reaction for social media. He asked her quietly at the small plot of land in Woji, now cleared and marked out for the office building she had finally decided to construct. On an ordinary evening, with the sun going down behind the cranes of his construction site in the distance. I know you don't need me to complete your life, he said. I've watched you build all of this without needing anyone. I'm not asking because I think you're incomplete. I'm asking because I would like to build the next part of my life next to someone who already knows how to build. She said yes. Not because a clock had finally run out on her, the way her family had always feared it would. She said yes because, for the first time, someone was asking to join a life she had already built proudly on her own, rather than offering to rescue her from one they assumed was empty. Their wedding, when it happened, was small. Far fewer guests than Chidima's, no toasts mocking anyone's timeline, no aunties counting years on their fingers in front of a microphone. Their mother cried again, but this time the tears were different, quieter, and I believed, finally, honest. Ijeoma stood beside her as her bridesmaid in a dress the color of soft gold, and when it was her turn to speak, she did not perform. She simply said, "My sister taught me, later than I would like to admit, that a woman's timeline is not a race against her sisters. It's just her own road, walked at her own pace. I'm sorry it took me this long to understand that. I love you, and I'm proud to stand beside you today." There was no laughter in the room this time, just the quiet, warm sound of a room full of people finally clapping for the right reasons. Ijeoma thinks about that first wedding often, the one where she sat alone in green and let 200 people laugh at a life they didn't understand. She is not angry about it anymore. She has come to believe that some rooms need to laugh at you before they can properly see you, that some people cannot recognize patience until it has already turned into something they can measure in naira and title deeds and government contracts. But the lesson here is not simply wait and you too will get rich, get a big contract and shame everybody who doubted you. That is not always how it goes, and chasing revenge dressed up as success will hollow a person out faster than any wedding toast ever could. The real lesson, the one Ijeoma actually built her life on, is quieter than that. Build something that belongs to you completely, regardless of who is watching or who is counting your years. Let your peace be something you carry with you into every room, not something you are waiting for a ring or an achievement to finally hand you. And when people mock what they don't understand, and they will, let your silence be dignified, not bitter, because dignity is the one thing nobody can take from you, and it is the one thing that eventually quiets every room. Chidinma and Ijeoma are close again now, closer than they've been since they were children, before the comparison started, before the family began measuring them against each other like competing crops in the same field. Some wounds, it turns out, can heal once the people who caused them are finally willing to see clearly. If this story touched something in you tonight, please like this video, subscribe to Tea's Tales by Moonlight, and turn on that notification bell so you never miss the next one. Tell me in the comments, have you ever built something quietly while the people closest to you doubted your timeline? And do you think Ijeoma should have forgiven Chidinma so easily after such a public humiliation? Share your story too. And if you know someone who needs to hear tonight that their own pace is not a failure, please share this video with them. Until the next story, this is T reminding you your season is coming. Don't let anyone's laughter convince you it isn't.